Hi, friends. Many years ago, I had a friend, still my friend, I guess. I just haven't seen them in many years. They had a conversation with their mom, and she shared it, and it blew my mind. She was a very formal young woman, and every time her mom did something for her, like take her to the playground, take her to a sporting event, drop her off at a friend's house, she would say thank you. Seems appropriate. I think it's probably what we should do. But one day her mother said, "Stop thanking me for loving you. I love you no matter what, and these are the ways that I love you." Now, again, I think children should thank their parents. I think we should live an attitude of gratitude all the time. But what a powerful statement of her mom. When you break it down, when you stop, when you think, you realize that the bonds of love are truly important. And that indeed a parent should do these baseline things to show love to a child. So today we're continuing in John chapter 4. We've looked at the woman at the well who's drinking, and we're looking at how that was a public conversation. And then she runs back to town, and another scene entirely unfolds. She tells everybody what happened. His disciples, on the other hand, tell him, "Rabbi, eat. Take a break. Let's get away from this. Let's not deal with all of this hoopla." It's interesting, the reactions. And Jesus uses that moment to teach them about mission. And then John gives us a second story that seals the lesson: the healing of a royal official's son. John 4:34. My food is to do the will of him who sent me and accomplish his work. Jesus says to the woman, drink this living water, but he says of himself, my food is to serve God, the Father. Now, Jesus is also God, so we have to be careful. But the lesson is for us. And he's saying, I'm here to do the work of God. And so are we. He says, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. So we need to understand something. Eating is nice. I love to eat. But our comfort should always be secondary to our duty. And our duty is to share the goodness of God, to look around us and see a broken and lonely world. It's really hard these days to even visit with one another. More and more as a pastor, I find the people that I marry met each other on the internet. Isn't it interesting that people are meeting on the internet, marrying people from 100 miles away, 200 miles away, 1,000 miles away, when they live in a town of 15, 20, 30,000 people, or 1,000,000. They can't find anyone near them. We're losing the ability to relate to one another. God's work, however, should interrupt our comfort. It's uncomfortable, apparently, for us to share with the people right next to us. But we certainly need to. We need to learn how to do that, and Jesus is the way to do that. When we take on the priority of God and the importance of others, then we do things that are uncomfortable to us. We choose to follow. And so we need to be aware in our distracted age that we need to listen to this word. And we also need to understand that sometimes grace acts before belief. It's an amazing thing that God does. He doesn't wait for us to be just right. He doesn't wait for us to fully understand. God enters into our lives when we need him most. And when we need him most, we're an enemy. We've turned our back on him. We've walked away from him. And once we see him, then he continues to interact with us. And we continue to not fully understand. Nonetheless, he pours grace into our lives. And all he asks in return is that we, among other things, would pour that grace into other lives. He asks that we worship him, that we share our faith with others, we obey his commandments. It's really not a high demand for what he's offering. But the question, friend, is, will we offer? Will we give the grace to others that was given to us? Well, we certainly can't do that if we're afraid to talk to them. And so we have to trust God to push us through our discomfort. And so we see this man comes to him, the royal official arrives. He has plenty of power of his own, but he turns to Jesus and says, my son is sick, will you heal him? And Jesus does. He does it without even going there. Jesus heals the boy with a word from a distance. And Jesus can heal the lives around you from a distance. The miracle comes before the man's settled faith. He says, I believe, but help my unbelief. So the third point for this message is love binds us to God more deeply than contracts ever could. The fact that Jesus cared for that man made that man care more about Jesus. He understood a little bit. He needed to know more. But even his little bit of understanding was enough to experience a life-changing event. And that can be true for you. If you would turn to Christ, if you would open your mind just a little bit, he will help you and he will enter in. And so we want to remember that just as a child obeys a loving parent, they're not purchasing love. When we listen to God, we're not purchasing love. It's already there. He's waiting, ready for us to respond. Friend, I'd encourage you today to consider your life. If you're feeling alone, if you're feeling unloved, now's the time. Go to a local church, worship God, draw near to him in your prayers, and experience a new life and push into the uncomfortable that will then become joyful. Friend, I hope to see you around. God bless.